Welcome everyone to the Speakeasy Cafe. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. I am Janelle Anderson, your host. In the Speakeasy Cafe, we do a little content, some tips and strategies on speaking or telling stories or running your own events. And then at the end, I open it up for questions and answers. And so today, questions, comments. So today we have been in this month, we have been focused on the theme of storytelling and diving into different aspects of storytelling. And so today's topic is how to find those hidden stories in your life, in your everyday life that you didn't even know you had, and how to create a story vault so that you can always pull from that when you need a good story. Oftentimes, coaches will tell me that they don't feel like they have a story, or they feel like they only have one story. But what if I told you that you're surrounded by powerful stories and you probably haven't even seen them? You didn't even realize that that was a story you could tell and connect with people in a powerful way. So that's what I'm sharing today, and hopefully this will be really helpful for you. So the truth is, your life is full of these stories that are out there waiting for you to use them. That they can teach, they can inspire, they can connect. And so I want to show you just how to uncover those hidden gems and also build that personal story vault that you can pull from anywhere, anytime. Why do you need a personal story vault? Well, it keeps your content fresh and engaging so that you're not always telling the same stories all the time. And also you can tailor stories exactly to that particular audience. So say if you're speaking on a summit, you can pull a new story in to fit that audience and fit that theme that maybe you haven't told somewhere else. So it keeps your content fresh, and it gives you confidence too, because then you're never wondering, well, what story should I tell? Because you have many to pull from. So while I was working with a story coach, I discovered how to tap into those everyday situations that I didn't even see in my own life, and figured out how I learned how to connect with the emotions the audience is probably feeling around the topic I'm sharing about, and how to pull in a story that connects with that emotion, even if it's a different story and it's not directly related to the topic. And these are some of the greatest stories that you can tell. For example, one of the stories that I discovered I could tell has to do with when I was learning or relearning how to play piano in my adult life after having taken lessons as a kid, and I hadn't played in years. And I suddenly had this desire to play piano. I wanted to play piano in church, and I hadn't been playing the piano. So I started trying to learn it on my own and found that I was really getting frustrated because I didn't know what I didn't know, and eventually found a mentor to teach me. And then I learned quickly. So I can share that story to connect with, even though in my event where I share that story, nobody's talking about, or I'm not talking about piano lessons to them, but I'm connecting that emotion of frustration of not knowing what I didn't know to learn something I really wanted to learn and master. Because in my audience, there are coaches wanting to learn and master how to speak or how to run their own events. And maybe they have been trying to do it on their own, and they're getting frustrated because they don't know what they don't know. So do you see how that everyday story can connect with that same emotion of frustration of not knowing what I don't know? And yet it's about piano playing and not running events. So think about those times in your life where there's little everyday stories. And maybe you think, I only have this one big story. And I used to think that. I used to think that I only had one big story and I needed to tell that all the time. But it didn't always fit. So when my story coach helped me to learn how to connect those emotions, then you can go think of and go find that story that has a similar emotion and see if it can connect to what your audience is probably feeling around whatever you're teaching. I have another one about robins that built a nest on our front porch, and I was watching the babies learn to fly, and the last little baby took forever and seemed to be really nervous to leave the comfort zone. And the mommy and daddy robin were chirping at it to come on, come on, come on. And it finally jumped out and was walking around on the ground. And the mommy bird was like, come on, spread your wings and fly. So that same fear of stepping out of the comfort zone and taking a leap and learning that you have wings to fly, that you have greater things in you. I can use that story when my audience is afraid to step into something bigger, or if I'm talking about, that stepping into something bigger and taking that leap and taking a risk, because it's the same emotion and it's a great story, but it's an everyday story. So you have a lot of those in your life. I want to talk about two of them. One is the defining moments method. So just kind of think of over the course of your life, what are those big or small moments where you had a mindset shift? Or maybe you faced a challenge or a breakthrough. What was a time where you realized, I need to change? It doesn't have to be around the specific thing you're talking about inside your workshop or when you're speaking on a stage, but it's just that moment of change and that breakthrough and that mindset shift. So I encourage you to start a story vault if you don't already have one, and spend some time thinking about those moments in your life where something changed. You had a mindset shift. One of my biggest ones that I tell in my 3-day event is around the words, if not now, when? And it was when I was trying to decide whether or not to jump into becoming a coach and spend all that money on coach training. And I was hemming and hawing and going back and forth. And I had that fear of taking that leap, right? And leaving that comfort zone. But I heard my boss in the other room telling her story about she and her husband were trying to decide whether to take their kids to Disney World. And they kept going back and forth and thinking, well, maybe we should wait, maybe next year. And she jumps in to her husband, if not now, when? The kids are growing. Who knows what's going to be happening next year? And she went on and on with that, like, if not now, when? That phrase was a defining moment for me in that time. I was sitting in my office hearing that, and it hit me like a laser beam to my heart, like, if not now, when? When will I do this if I don't do it now? And so I tell that story, and that was a big shift for me. It was a big mindset shift moment. There was another one where I was much younger, before I became a coach, and my first marriage was falling apart. My husband had left, just taken off, packed his bags and left. And I remember standing in the kitchen on the phone with my dad, so overwhelmed. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a household of furniture and things, and how was I going to move myself with my little 3-year-old girl? And I was just in fear. I was in that panic mode. And my dad talked me through it by saying, one box at a time. Just pack one box at a time. Take it one day at a time. And from that moment, I had that mindset shift of, I can get through big things, overwhelming things, by taking it one day at a time and one box at a time. That was something in a conversation that hit me and shifted me. It was a defining moment. So think about those defining moments in your life where maybe you were in a conversation, somebody said something, and it just like hit you, and an aha moment happened, and you were able to shift and make that change that you wanted to make. Those are great stories. You need to tell those stories. And like I said, create your story vault and take those ones that are really going to match well with the emotions of your audience, and then work on them. Create a story out of them. The second type of story is called the everyday lesson scan. I talk about this as teaching moments, where maybe you have moments with family or friends, or even in your childhood, where your mom or dad had a moment to teach you something because you were doing something that you shouldn't have done or whatever. And maybe it was an unexpected experience. Maybe you had a big win. Maybe you made a mistake and you learned from it. And those everyday stories can become a business lesson or a life lesson. It could be an everyday story that surprised you. So when was the last time something small taught you a big lesson? I talk a lot of times about my dog chasing moles and catching a mole one time and bringing it into the house. Small taught me a big lesson about this might sound strange, but he loves, he's very driven to hunt. He's a terrier. And once he catches his prey, that's it. You're not getting near him. And I think about that a lot with business, how we're always chasing after our clients. And and we feel like we have to chase them down and catch them and hold on to them, but we don't. We just need to attract them to us. So, kind of a funny story, but an everyday story. So think about those moments. Little things happened. Maybe you had a conversation with a neighbor and it really affected you, and it taught you something. You learned a lesson and you could apply it to your business or to your life. Those are really great stories because people can relate to them. I often talk about the gardening kinds of stories or things in nature that can teach us big lessons. Sometimes I'll talk about our peach tree that when it first was planted, it only didn't produce anything the first year. And then the second year, it had a pretty good crop of peaches. But by the third year, there were so many peaches that we couldn't keep up with it all. And we lost a lot of them because they were falling on the ground. So many peaches. And that is a story I tell sometimes when I talk about there's abundance in the world and, moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Because when I saw that, I was like, well, why am I worried? I'm sowing seeds into my business and it's growing. And if I continue to tend to it, it will produce a great crop like my peach tree did. So you have so many stories hidden in your life. So I want to give you a real quick brainstorming exercise that you can do as soon as we're done today or sometime soon. Set a timer for 10 minutes, sometime this week, and brainstorm as many stories as you can from these two categories. The everyday lesson, where, you had a moment that taught you something, or the mindset shift moment in your life, a defining moment. Spend some time, jot down as many of those as you can, and then aim for about 10 to 12 stories. Just list them. You don't have to write them all out as a story, but just list the moment, the situation where something happened. Make a list of all those, and then you can go back and develop them into stories. And then just continue to add to that vault when something else happens. Be looking for those everyday stories, for those moments when you have that aha. You're like, wow. That was great. Now I understand. Or you have that mindset shift, and write them down. Before long, you will have a lot of stories to pull from. And then the next time you need a story, you can go to your vault, pick out just the right one that will match the emotions of whatever your audience is likely feeling based on the topic you're sharing, and then bring that story in. Practice telling it and relate it to your topic. So just remember to keep capturing those noon moments as they happen, and before long, you will be a great storyteller. So this actually concludes our theme of storytelling for this month, and next month we will have a new theme starting up. And so I hope that you go back and watch the previous ones. If you have missed them, they're all going to be on my YouTube channel, and they will also be on my app, which is called Emerging Life Coaching. And you can find them on my website, which is emerginglifecoach.com, is where I keep adding those stories, those speakeasy cafes. So I hope that you got a lot out of this, and we'll come back and watch our next video. Our next speakeasy cafe will be next Monday, and I will see you all then. If you are here in Zoom with me, hang on, and I will open up the room for questions.